very good evening to one and all. Thank you so much for joining with us today on the occasion of English Language Day. English language has earned a status of global language. It is the second most spoken language after Mandarin. English Language Day is celebrated every year on 23rd of April. This day marks the birth and the death anniversary of the greatest playwright of all times, William Shakespeare. Lesser known fact to most of us is that a great filmmaker, Mr. Satyajit Ray, also died on 23rd April, which makes this day even more special for all of us. Maya Angelou once said, "I admire people who dare to take the language English and understand it and understand the melody." Learning of a language must be a joyous process. Language gives us the freedom of expression. Language is a medium and literature is the product. To illustrate more on this, today we have with us Ms. Sudha Ravi. She's been an English language teacher and trainer for almost 3 decades. She's been training teachers, principals, and educators in language pedagogy. She's a certified master trainer for CBSE. She's highly qualified in English language from IFLU, Hyderabad. She was one of the members of the material production team for Class 10 communicative course and Class 11 functional English team for CBSE. She wears multiple hats of language trainer and examiner with an international examining body and a content developer for English language. She's also a certified storyteller who firmly believes that stories can be used for teaching anything and everything to children. Before getting into the full-time training, Ms. Sudha Ravi was Vice Principal of APJ School, Pitampura, Delhi. These multiple roles have helped her understand the needs of the learners at one end and the needs of the teachers who are at the other end of the spectrum, which led her to co-found Teacher Magi, an initiative to empower teachers in multiple classroom strategies. Teacher training is her passion, and she aspires to empower educators across the country. With profound gratitude and pride, I would like to now call upon Ms. Sudha Ravi to connect with us and shed some light on English language being a medium and literature the product. Welcome to the session, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you, Himani, and thank you, the team at Madhuban. And thank you, educators who are there from various parts watching this program. Yes, it is indeed the greatest playwright's, birth anniversary, and a good way to celebrate it, because we all, whosoever has been an English language student at some point or done English language literature, we all have read Shakespeare. So Shakespeare has been part and parcel of every BA and MA program conducted by universities across India. So thank you, Himani, for inviting me for this event. And so let's kind of begin by understanding or, kind of debriefing the whole concept.
So, ma'am, I was talking. Yes, I'm so sorry. I just got a little network issue. So, ma'am, we were talking of language being the medium and literature the product. We see in a lot of schools that language and grammar books are used along with the main course book. So the focus shifts in schools right from language to actually reading of the lessons or the main course book. So how do we justify the fact that language, we want to develop the language, we want the children to be fluent in the language, so that literature becomes the product, where the focus is on literature at this point?
Yeah. So language is the medium. Okay. So when we design curriculum, when we design books, your MCB becomes the book, which is the skill book, the skill development, where you have the listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities. And there is a grammar book and there is a literature component, which is in the form of a book where you have some poetry thrown in, you have some plays, and you have some prose lessons or extracts from stories, for example. So now the thing is, if we concentrate on the literature reader, teachers sometimes feel that they have to, line by line, word by word, explain the literary pieces that are included in the literature book. The child for whom English is the second language and who is sitting in our classroom is not even aware of the nuances of the language. Now, literature is the high order. It's the, it starts, it's up there. Literature is not something which is the lowest form of language. It is the highest form of language expression. So we have to aspire to take our children to that level. So for that, we need to make them competent in the language. They need to be so comfortable that they should start playing around with the language. They should like the language. They should follow different types of, written expressions. They should be able to speak. They should be able to read short sentences, long sentences, convoluted expressions. And once they start mastering the language, then a literary piece becomes very easy because that is the next level. But then we go step by step. So the MCB or the language book, whatever you want to call it the skill development book, you want to call it the main course book, people give it different names. That is okay. But then the crux of the matter is work on the language, the literature will take care of itself. But if you work on the literature, the language may happen, may not happen. Every child is not competent to understand that high order language.
And that's why a lot of students, ma'am, tend to say, oh, English is the most difficult subject. We just don't want to, or even any language for that matter, is very difficult. We don't want to do it. Ma'am, I'm sure some of our educators might be a little confused here, where we say when we talk of language, is language the same as grammar, or is it a different thing that we're referring to here?
So grammar is required for a language. Grammar is a component of language. You can't construct a sentence without, what is a sentence? A sentence is words woven together. And if you break a sentence, each word in that sentence has we refer to it as parts of speech. We say it's an article. Book is a noun. So a sentence is nothing but words which come together, which are put in the right order so that they sound good and they are grammatically woven in the correct manner. So grammar is a component of language. You know what? Why we have to never learn the grammar of our native language, which is our mother tongue. How do we get it? Nobody makes us sit and teach noun, pronoun. How do we get it? We are constantly exposed to that language. We listen to our parents speaking. We listen to the family speaking. Whether you are Hindi speaking, whatever may be your mother tongue. How do we pick that language up? Those expressions become part of our subconscious and we start using them. They say, that a child is listening even in the womb. So, till 1 year, they don't speak, but they are absorbing, they are listening. That is why LSRW, listening comes first. So expose the children to more and more listening at younger stages so that they are listening to structures, they are listening to patterns, they are listening to the pronunciation, everything. And then suddenly they will start speaking one day. But this is L2, this is not L1. So in L2, we have to follow the same pattern to train them. That is the process I am referring to. So in very small classes, maximum amount should be devoted time, in a, say, 30 minutes period or 40 minutes. The majority of the time should be devoted for listening. Then comes speaking, then a little bit reading. And writing shouldn't come in. Technically, it shouldn't. Anyway, that's a different debate and a different discussion. But what I mean is that in that order, if you keep exposing and keep increasing the time, keep making one less and keep increasing the time that they read, that they write, so that over a period of time, it's a cohesive activity. It's a cohesive effort. So that's how it has to happen. That's why I keep saying it's a process. It's not only mathematics and science which have to be taught step by step. And if you miss a step, they say, no, in maths teachers always insist, if you miss the step, you will lose marks. That's how they threaten the students in the schools, right? But then language learning is a process. It happens step by step. You cannot jump. You cannot jump the gun.
You very clearly and very, logically made sense that it has to be listening, speaking, reading, writing. Thus, we always say LSRW. However, I've always felt that in classes, it's actually reading, then writing, and then probably a little speaking and some part of listening. So that's where probably we are going wrong. So yesterday, when we were discussing, you talked about a poem you did in the class. If you could share that with this audience.
Yeah. So, I still remember that it was very important for me that students appreciate poetry as a genre. They don't like it. No child wants to do poetry. So how do we break this barrier was always my concern. And way back, I'm talking of some time in 90s or something, when we didn't have so much of digital tools at our disposal. That's why even today, when I do webinars or workshops, I have a lot of respect for digital tools. Today, we are doing all this, but then don't make that as the primary thing. The teacher in the class, there is no substitute for the teacher. So, what I did, I had to teach this poem. So I actually used, those days we used to get those tapes, and we had those recording tapes. So I recorded my voice. I read out the poem very correctly with the right intonation, with the right chunking. And I took care of the pronunciation. I practiced it, and then I recorded. I took the tape recorder to the school along with the batteries. And I just told my students, I'm going to play something. Just close your eyes and enjoy. Okay. So I played it once. I played it twice. I played it 3 times. So 3 times they were listening. So what was happening when they were listening? They were obviously listening to pronunciation. Subconsciously, all this happens. Pronunciation of those words, where I was pausing, everything they were getting exposed to. After this, I told them, go to page number so-and-so, and there where the poem is. And then we did some little warm-up. This itself is a warm-up, but just a few questions about, the title and stuff. Then I said, now I just picked randomly students, and I said, I want you to read, stanza 1, stanza 2, like that. Now here, I'm prompting a question. Many of the educators sitting here might ask, who has this kind of time? Okay. That is the question. I know.
Another thing is that children won't listen, ma'am.
Yeah. See, that is why it has to be a culture. It won't happen overnight. Okay. Right. See, when you do it first time, they will, because they are curious. Children have curiosity. Now, I did this with class 7. Okay. Now in middle school, but if you take a tape recorder maybe to class 12 the first time, they may not, because they have never ever been exposed to this methodology, right? But then if you tell them, okay, just listen, maybe some pop song here for you. But then if you have done it well and it's recorded well, it's making sense to them, they will. Let us at one level not debunk the idea and say that students will. Many a times as teachers, we think it may not work. It may, you will face challenges. Aren't we facing challenges every day? So why a challenge in the classroom cannot be, worked around, right? So this is how I did that whole thing. And I did not explain sentence by sentence, word by word. Believe me, I had made a set of 40 questions based on that poem. I had written it down. And I did not even check what was there at the back of the poem. And, I asked those questions and the answers came. Pop came the answers. I only had to highlight some literary, aspects, figures of speech, as we call them, simile, metaphor, whatever they did not know, I had to spend some time. So instead of wasting our time reading, explaining line by line, word by word, can we do this? Is all that. And today they have the digital, right? They have books which have the recording available. You can just play that. You don't even have to. We went through all that. You don't even have to do that. You can create on the Word doc. You can create your question list and save it, right? So there, where digital comes as an assisting tool.
Very true. And ma'am, I strongly feel that, doing these things, and as a teacher, if you enjoy teaching,
Correct.
This makes a lot of difference. And
Right.
when you enjoy teaching and you take initiatives like this and you try to find out a new pedagogy or a new way of teaching, it engages the students at a different level.
Absolutely.
So so every class becomes interesting. It
Correct.
doesn't have to be one monotonous way of
Yeah.
teaching a language. Every
Correct.
class can be different. I remember the way you're saying, I remember learning Macavity, the mystery cat, the
Yeah,
same.
exactly. Yeah.
So we had, I still remember we used to, one of our class fellows used to become the cat. And anyone who was,
Exactly.
so different ways of doing a.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You innovate. Look at your students, so this is where, when you draw, design set of questions, you also incorporate creative thinking questions, critical thinking questions. How would you have done it? How do you think, do you think what the poet did was right? So then you are engaging, you just now said engaging students. This is how students get engaged. When they become part and they start enjoying the class, then there is no, then there is no going back. Then it's kind of, they start suggesting, we'll do this way. Students start coming up with suggestions, and that is what is engagement. And that is what NEP is talking about, engaging students. And, what is creative thinking, critical thinking, and all
So,
these.
ma'am, what kind of questions? A few that you mentioned here, they're more like open-ended questions, which don't have a necessarily a right or a wrong answer. So that kinds of opens your creative mind that I can think of anything.
Correct. That's your perception. Of course, you have to justify. See, especially in a story, if there is a plot, there are characters. Then what you think. So why do you think? That's when you try to tell them that, try to find instances to justify your, statement. So slowly, that is a high order skill, where you say, I think he is so and so, he behaves like this, he believes in this, these seem to be his general attitude. How do you come to this conclusion? How do you come to this conclusion about the character in the story, that he is greedy, he's like this? How do you come to that? So then children start looking for instances. Okay, look for words, look for expressions that tell you. So just one instance, okay, let us park it, let us keep it aside. Let us look for some more things which are pronounced, which are staring at your face. So here, the engagement becomes involvement. They involve themselves. They could do this as a group. So as you just now said, each time it could be a different style. One time it could be a group activity, it could be pair work, it could be, individual, it could be whole class, it could be a quiz. Actually, just before starting this session at 4:30, I was reading a paper. I was reading a research paper published in Japan on language and literature. Can you believe it? And it talked about how, first developing the competence in language leads to the child wanting more. Okay, I have read all this. Now I have understood language. I can process it. So can you suggest to me some more books?
Right.
Those kind of things. I mean, we have to keep experimenting. We have to see the book is just a tool. Okay. The lessons in the book, yes, they have to be completed. Parents will be asking us. We have those pressures. I have been part of a system. When I'm talking, it's not just as a trainer. I have been a teacher and I have attended to parents. So all that pressure would be there. It's a juggle, but you do find that, that right fit. At some point, okay, take a double period, do when you're doing a longish activity, take 2 periods together. Generally, in the timetable, we can manage once a week.
And ma'am, I also feel that if the child is improving in his language skills,
Exactly.
we have kind of won the battle there. We have
Absolutely.
something to justify our work and our efforts, saying that fair enough, I've not done 20 lessons, I've done 18, but you see, and even the parent would feel that the child has improved.
Correct. And those two could be self-learning. You could give them as an activity, project work. Put them in groups, ask them to find out, put it together in the class. All that can be done. And if you are, as you just now said, once the language becomes, you're good in the language, you become better at understanding of other text, understanding of your social science text, understanding the science text, expressions, sentences, long, winding statements. So you are able to break it and, see, okay, there are 2 or 3 things that this whole, this paragraph is talking about. So these are language skills that we teach them. We teach them to, look at a textual material and break it into its components, make notes. What is note making? That is all it is about. Break it into points. So these skills that are taught in the English class can be used in other subject periods where these skills come in useful.
And a lot of students, talking of language learning, you mentioned a point here that understanding of the text becomes easier. Today, as we celebrate Shakespeare's birth and death anniversary on English Language Day, Shakespeare has been considered as one of the most difficult texts. Correct. And with all the arts and the thous and this and that, I remember when we were being taught, our teacher, she gave us a lot of metaphors, puns, and other things way before beginning Shakespeare. And she gave us a few examples and she told us that, explore more, find out more, give each other, your friend circle, a metaphor, or what pun would you use for your best friend.
Correct.
So that ways it became so much fun that we actually began looking forward to read Shakespeare.
Yeah. So that could be an activity, like you said. So if you know that you're going to do a play or a text by, let us say, Saki Munro, so what kind of typical expression, you know the text. So, you can take up the figures of speech before. That could be a warm-up activity, and you could just do this thing in the class and ask them to look for more and use friends, use family, and describe them. So that becomes easier. And, that way they learn also. It's easier to relate to somebody known rather than just we pick up those characters straight away in that book. And then, you have to relate, it becomes difficult. But then if you have already built on it by giving them an activity like this in the beginning, so then, so then they start correlating. It's very important that, that correlation happens in the brain. You see, the brain processes information in small chunks. There is so much research today on chunking information, how you should chunk information for students. And the younger the students are, the more chunking you need to do. You cannot just load them with information. They need to take it in small tidbits. It has to be bite size, as they say, bite size. So, if a child is 6 years old, they say the attention span is 2 times, so 12 minutes. So 12 minutes means if in a 30 minutes period, how do you, now you decide how in those 12 minutes, the attention span that the child has, how are you going to help him understand what you want him to get? So, everything comes here, your planning, your assessment, you have to plan everything in such a way that the maximum
absorption happens, assimilation. Then talking of chunking, at Madhuban, we're very careful, and with most of our books today, the recent series, we have mind maps at the end of the lesson. So this is like training the students. And in our language books, literature books, we've trained the students how to create mind maps. So like you said, not only for language skills, but also helping them with social studies and sciences, rather more there, So because if you develop the skills in language, automatically the rest of the subjects are sorted.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned yesterday that a lot of students, they are intelligent. It's not that they're not intelligent, but they don't just understand.
Correct. So the understanding problem comes because their language comprehension is weak, and they somewhere understand, the ones who understand, they cannot reproduce it because they cannot, how much will they rote memorize? So when they read, at that point, they get it. They understand it in their native language, maybe somewhere inside, but then reproduction has to happen in English. So they fall flat. They find it so difficult. And because I have experienced this, children telling me, Ma'am, I don't get it. I don't understand. So then what do you do for such children? So as a practice, if in a school, right from class 1, language teaching is, the process is developed across. Teachers sit together and map the whole thing, what skills, how they are going to take the students from one level to the next. Then you will see that as they go up, then everything falls in place. It comes together. I have seen students, oh, tomorrow is only English exam. I mean, I don't have to study. So it's not about studying. It's not about studying at all. It's about being able to express yourself. If you have to put it in one sentence, in the language paper, you should be able to express yourself.
If I take up this statement and I build on it, then expression and language skills, they're even more important today. Why, when we say that challenges at the expression are increasing, even personal front.
Correct, absolutely. And see, I have seen this when I say the other end of the spectrum. You look at adult learners, okay, 18 plus year old students or young 20 plus coming into organizations, joining as interns, joining at the executive levels. What is it? The one who goes up is the one who communicates well. Of course, he has to be good in his, the skill that if you are a computer person, if you're an IT guy, you have to be good in your IT skills. But you are not going to be right there all the time creating softwares, right? You aspire to become a manager. You aspire to move step by step, whatever is the hierarchy in the organization. And what takes you there, apart from your core skills, is your ability to communicate, evaluate, critically evaluate, to be able to negotiate, to be able to talk, converse, to convince. If you're a business analyst and you are sitting across, somebody to whom you have to explain how your software works, then what is it required? Convincing skills. Can you convince the person that what you are giving is the best? Okay. So, of course, somebody may argue and say that's more of marketing. But yes, it is marketing. But then whatever language you speak, at least you should be able to speak it well.
It all boils down to, ma'am, language skills. Yeah. If I have to say it very briefly, I'll say that that is one of the reasons that we say that work pressure or depression or other things are increasing, because sometimes you're not able to communicate, like you said. Sometimes, in some cases, it's communication. In some cases, I know I'm technically strong, but I'm not able to express myself or put myself out there. Again, that builds. And there are some people who may not be technically as strong, but then the communication skills lead them to a certain position.
Yeah, exactly.
So communication skills not only teach us for English learning or language speaking, but in life generally.
Correct.
Your language.
It is our responsibility. We as school teachers have to ensure that after being with us from the age of 3 till the age of 17, in those 14, 15 years that children stay with us, when they get out, they should be able to talk confidently, look into the eyes and talk about themselves, talk about the world around them. They don't have to talk about the economic inequalities and, very big, heavy subjects, but then to be able to converse, talk, convince, and make what they call as, to make a small conversation, for example, to carry out a conversation even at the airport. Can you talk at length in a particular language? Today, it's very unfortunate. Children are neither good at their mother tongue, nor they are good at English.
English.
That part. Yeah.
I don't know, when we, as we are on a very sensitive point here, I would like to, sensitize the teachers also. Just imagine yourself in a foreign land where you don't know the language, where you can't use that language. Imagine the frustration building in.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, we feel that students nowadays have become loud or they're non-obedient because the poor things, they don't understand. That's not their language. And we are pushing them for 8 hours in a day just to speak in that language or read in that language or understand that language when it doesn't come naturally to them.
Exactly. Why are we assuming? Has always been the question that I have been asking. Why are we assuming that they know it? Have we done a little bit of, some testing to find out when they come from class 1 to 2? Why are we in a hurry to, on day one, start the class 2 curriculum? Can we do a little bit of, the KWL chart? What they already know, and what they wish to know. So these are some of the classroom strategies. This is for everybody, every teacher. So, but then, when we take them from one to the next, unless and until, and you can see it in their eyes, that spark will be there when they understand. When they don't understand, they would either be disinterested, looking out, or they would be doing something else. If they are in a online class, you would never come to know. They might be physically present, but mentally absent kind of situation. So today we are looking at language. So we will restrict ourselves talking about language enhancement and how to make them competent users of the language.
Of English language.
English language. And the literature, believe me, will take care of itself. Excuse me.
So, ma'am, I'll move from here to my last question for the day today, where we say that how will mastery of a language lead to the appreciation of literature? Your last sentence was literature will take care of itself. But how will that happen?
That will happen because when you're mastering the language, what are you mastering? You're mastering vocabulary. You're mastering, as I said, the grammar. You're mastering the finer nuances of the language. They are also mastering the multiple ways to tell something. So literature is a set of, what is it? Literature comprises of, prose, poetry, novels, novella, plays, etc. So people who have, today given us those works, today we are sitting and talking on Shakespeare's Day, right? So people who have given us those works, they actually were masters of the language. That's why they could produce those kind of great works, which are even used today. So you become better at understanding the expression and you develop love for the literature. Then that's when people say, okay, I like Tagore. So I have read all Tagore's works. I like Ruskin Bond. I have read all his works, R.K. Narayan. So children can be exposed to multiple authors, multiple, right from that level. Literature is a component of language. Okay, that's a high order component of the language. It will remain a component in the school level because the child is being provided an opportunity to look at multiple things. We throw a little bit of science, we put in mathematics there. Now CBSE even has a lower maths and a higher maths. Students are not interested in science, they can look at lower maths and just basically, the basic numeracy skills is what they need. So, all that is available. So let them first learn the language. And those who are interested can later on, go for BA literature. Who is stopping them? But then to use only literature in the classroom, teacher concentrating on the literature book and not working on the language is not something that is desirable. It is the other way around. Go from language to literature rather than from literature to language. You can do that, but at a later date. In that Japanese research paper, that's what they said. They said, they had to teach them Somerset Maugham's work and how they did it. I mean, it's a big discussion and we don't have time, but then how they did comparative study, the groups got into comparative study. They studied, Somerset Maugham and then some other person, his works, and then they came out with a comparison. Even that is a good way, good activity. Give students stories in groups and tell them, okay, your group will work on this character in the story. There could be an animal character. This group will work on this character. So tomorrow you all will come and you will tell the rest of the class about this character. You will tell about this character. And then a reading can happen. So like this, you have to constantly innovate, keep thinking how I can take this to the classroom. Make the literature also something to teach language, if I will put it that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I so agree with you, ma'am, that, using literature, I mean, a small story like, Thirsty Crow. Even if I take, how would you draw a character sketch of that particular crow?
Yeah.
He was
exactly.
problem solver.
Yeah.
He was a go-getter. So again, you get these different words and phrases.
Correct. Absolutely.
And then you build on them, and language once develops. We say that a lot of educators tell us that, reading is a challenge. Children don't read.
Correct.
My first question is, do you read?
Yeah.
My second question.
And again, reading is a process. Okay. We have to take them step by step. You cannot just tell them, open this book and start reading. So, how do they read?
And ma'am, also, you ask students, what do they love reading? They don't know the genres. They don't know that, I like mystery or I like love story.
Exactly.
Or, they don't have a favorite, because we give them the book and we say, let's read this.
Exactly.
So again, once they begin loving the language, like ma'am said, they would want to read Tagore maybe. One of them wants to read Tagore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They start developing a love for, there is a very interesting experiment to find out what children like to read. So, just take passages or reading material on different topics, on sport, on temple, on cinema, and just leave it in the class and ask children to pick what they like and just keep observing. Actually, one teacher did this experiment. Okay. And she then started getting some more. So she found out that, there were children who were looking for a particular type. There was this boy who was always wanting sports articles. Okay. So she would bring Sports Week and stuff to the class. Then she started telling me, okay, I have given you so many Sports Week, over a period of 15 days, but you have to be very patient in education. Things won't happen overnight. Education itself it's a journey, right? So after 15 days, this teacher said, now I want you to read this story and see. She patiently waited for 14 days. A person called Donna, her book is called Donna Whisperer or something. And, then this child started picking other things. Then he found interest in short stories. So see how she moved him from reading sports to reading short stories. So this was happening in the reading. So today CBSE is talking about reading. Yes. So much thrust is being given on reading. And, can we allocate one of the English periods? So when you do all this, the curriculum-based reading automatically will fall into place. They will pick it up. Let us have that faith in our own method, and let us trust our own style and method.
That's amazing. So, ma'am, so for all the educators here, I think one key thing, the key takeaway from this talk today is that we need to build a culture and then be patient with it. Because again, developing culture in itself will need a lot of patience though, but let's be patient. Let's keep working nonstop. Let's keep innovating new ideas, and let's develop a love for language ourselves. I'm sure all of us, all the realty educators connected with me, or even other language educators connected with us today here, will understand that you have to have that love for your language, for your subject that you are teaching, and you'll automatically come up with ideas. And like ma'am said, one point, another takeaway from here is that these kind of initiatives, activities, or methods of teaching, reduce your burden of teaching per se, of monotonous teaching. We feel that this is the unwalked road and it's going to be difficult. No, try it out. It's something new, and it's going to make a day interesting for you also, and reduce that pressure that, okay, every child, I'm reading each line, I'm explaining every line, and every child learns the same way. teaching cannot be same even for different sections or even in the same section for different students.
So
Learning is a process.
Teacher talk time versus student talk time. TTT versus STT. Okay. Actually, a teacher wore a watch, timer with a timer and was observing how much was she talking in the class and how much time was being given. So, we can do all this if we are very conscious and if we are willing to take our own feedback for ourselves and willing to constantly work on ourselves. There is nothing to stop us from, trying out multiple strategies.
Absolutely. And I am sure this talk has been very, very interesting and enriching for all of us here today. And I would take this moment on behalf of the entire Madhuban family to thank Sudha ma'am for giving us her valuable time on a Saturday evening, where even she could have had a nice weekend to enjoy with her, and giving us such lovely, guidelines and guidance on language learning, on language, moving from language to literature, and how mastery of a language can help us not only in teaching, learning, but as in the life also. So a lot of learning has happened in this short, crisp session. If any of us, we wish to learn more about language learning, language teaching, and like ma'am talked about the process of learning, please feel free to connect with any one of our team members located at different locations across the country, and we'll be more than happy to do an elaborate session, webinar, or a workshop for you. We'll have Sudha ma'am do it for us, and please do keep in touch. And also, we'll be sharing one of the QR codes after this session. For all the ELT teachers, I would request, if you're interested on more such helpful initiatives by Madhuban, helpful teaching strategies on English language from Madhuban, please register yourself on the QR code and connect with us. We'll make sure that language teaching and language learning for the students becomes the most joyous process across all schools.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mani.
Thank you so much, Sudha. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is our QR code. Please scan this. We'll keep this on for a few minutes. You can scan this, take a screenshot and scan it later on. Register yourself for effective teaching of English language. We'll keep sharing useful information with all of you. So make sure you connect with us and keep on receiving interesting information on English language teaching. Thank you, and time for a nice cup of tea for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Himani.
Thank you.
Have a nice
weekend.
Much.
You too.
Thank you to everyone from Madhuban who has joined from various places. And thank you all the educators for taking time out and listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudha.